The survey ship Darwin's Hope drifted through the empty darkness between stars. It had been 6 months since the crew left Earth, and they were all getting tired of staring at the same walls and the same faces. Commander Helen Wright sat in her chair on the bridge, drinking coffee that tasted like recycled water because that was exactly what it was. She was reading through another boring survey report when the alarm started screaming. "What is that?" Helen jumped from her chair, spilling coffee on her uniform. The sound was so loud it hurt her ears. Lieutenant Ben Cooper was already at his station, his fingers moving fast across the controls. "It's a distress signal, Commander. Coming in on every frequency we can receive." "From who?" "Checking now." Ben's face went pale as he read his screen. "It's from Velis Prime, the agricultural world about 3 light years from here. They're calling for help." Helen felt her stomach twist. She knew about Velis Prime. It was a peaceful world, home to about 3 million people who mostly farmed and lived quiet lives. They had no military, no weapons, nothing that could hurt anyone. The Galactic Council protected them. That was the deal. Small, peaceful worlds got protection from the big civilizations in exchange for trade and cooperation. "Put the message on speakers," Helen ordered. Static filled the bridge for a moment. Then a voice broke through. It was high-pitched and scared, speaking in the common galactic language that most species used. "This is Velis Prime calling any council ship. We are under attack. The Krath came 3 days ago. Our cities are burning. Millions are dead. Please, someone help us. Our children are dying, please." The message repeated, over and over. The same desperate words. Helen looked at the screen that showed what was happening on Velis Prime. Even from space, she could see the fires. Whole cities were burning. The video showed massive ships shaped like insects hovering over population centers. Small fighter craft darted down and fired on anything that moved. People ran through streets trying to find shelter. Children cried for parents who would never come home. "The Krath," Lieutenant Maya Torres whispered from her station. "I thought the council dealt with them." Everyone knew about the Krath swarm. They were one of the few species that every civilization in the galaxy hated. The Krath didn't trade or negotiate. They just consumed. They would land on a world, kill everything living, strip the planet of resources, and move on. They left nothing behind but dead rocks floating in space. The Council had declared them enemies of all civilized species decades ago. "How long has this been broadcasting?" Helen asked, her voice tight. 4 days, Ben replied. "The signal is getting weaker. I think their power grid is failing." 4 days. Helen's hands curled into fists. 4 days those people had been screaming for help and no one had come. "What about Council forces?" she demanded. "There has to be a response fleet." Ben shook his head. "I've been checking every Council military frequency. There's nothing. No response, no fleet movements, nothing. It's like they don't even know this is happening." "That's impossible," Commander Greg Sullivan said. He was Helen's second in command, a careful man who always followed the rules. "Council protocols require immediate response to any distress signal from a protectorate world, especially from a Krath attack." "Well, no one told the Council that," Ben said bitterly, "because I'm not seeing any help coming." Helen pulled up more information on her screen. The Krath had at least 50 capital ships in orbit around Velis Prime, maybe more. They had surrounded the planet completely. Nothing was getting in or out. On the surface, they were systematically destroying every city, every town, every farm. They worked with horrible efficiency. "How many survivors?" Helen asked quietly. Maya checked her readings. "Difficult to say, Commander. Maybe 2 million, maybe less. The death toll is rising every hour. 2 million people waiting for help that wasn't coming." "Commander," Greg stepped closer to her chair, "we're a survey ship. We have 40 crew members and 2 small defensive guns. We can't fight the Krath. No one expects us to." Helen knew he was right. The Darwin's Hope was built to map star systems and study planets. It was not a warship. If they went to Velis Prime, the Krath would destroy them in minutes. They wouldn't save anyone. They would just die. But she kept watching the video feed. A mother was carrying 2 children through a burning street. An old man was trying to help injured people into a building. Teenagers were forming bucket lines to fight fires that consumed entire city blocks. "Contact Earth Command," Helen said suddenly. "Commander?" Greg looked surprised. "Send them everything. The distress signal, our tactical readings, all the video feeds, everything we have." "We're not authorized to request military intervention," Greg said carefully. That's above our level. We're supposed to report through proper channels and wait for orders. I don't care about proper channels, Helen snapped. 3 million people are dying while the galaxy sits on its hands. Someone needs to know what's happening here. Ben nodded and started composing the message. Done. At this distance, we should get a response in about 6 hours. Helen watched the countdown timer appear on her screen. 6 hours until Earth Command received the message. Then time to analyze it, debate it, make decisions. Days before any response could reach Velis Prime. Plot a course for Velis Prime, Helen ordered. Maximum speed. Commander, Greg moved to block her view. Even if Earth authorizes intervention, we're still days away. And we're not equipped for combat. What exactly do you think we can do? Helen met his eyes steadily. I don't know yet. But I know we can't just sit here listening to them die. We have families back home, Greg said quietly. The crew has families. You're talking about flying into a battle we can't win. I know what I'm talking about, Helen said. And I'm not ordering anyone to come along. When we're a safe distance from Velis Prime, anyone who wants to can take a shuttle and wait for pickup. But I'm going. Those people asked the galaxy for help and the galaxy ignored them. I won't do the same. Greg stared at her for a long moment, then sighed. You're going to get us all killed. Maybe, Helen admitted. But maybe we'll do some good first. The Darwin's Hope changed course, its engines burning hot as it raced toward Velis Prime. In the common room, the crew gathered to watch the news. Earth's media had picked up the story. The distress signal from Velis Prime was playing on every channel. People were asking questions. Why wasn't the Council responding? Where were the mighty fleets that were supposed to protect peaceful worlds? What good were all the treaties and alliances if no one actually helped when help was needed? Helen watched it all from her quarters. She had sent the message to Earth Command hours ago. Now she could only wait and hope that someone with authority would decide to do the right thing. On her screen, the distress signal from Velis Prime continued to repeat. The voice was getting fainter now, more desperate. Please, someone help us. Our children are dying, please. Helen made a decision then. Even if Earth Command said no, even if the Council ordered them to stay away, even if it cost her career and her life, she was not going to let those people die alone. If humanity was going to be part of the Galactic Council, if Earth was going to join the community of spacefaring civilizations, then they needed to prove they were worthy of that honor. And being worthy meant answering when someone called for help. 3 days later, the Darwin's Hope would reach Velis Prime. Helen hoped that by then, Earth would have sent something more powerful than a survey ship. But if they hadn't, if humanity chose safety over honor, then at least one human ship would be there. At least someone would answer the call. The galaxy might not care about Velis Prime. The Council might have decided those 3 million lives weren't worth the political complications or military costs. But Helen Wright cared. Her crew cared. And maybe, just maybe, Earth cared too. They would find out soon enough. One way or another, humanity was about to make a choice that would define how the galaxy saw them for generations to come. Helen just hoped they would choose correctly. Admiral Patricia Hughes walked into the emergency meeting room at exactly 3 in the morning. She had been asleep when the call came, but now she was wide awake and angry. Very angry. On the screens around the room, the images from Velis Prime played on repeat. Cities burning, people running, children crying, and through it all, that desperate voice calling for help that never came. The Security Council members were already seated. These were the people who made the big decisions for Earth. They represented every major nation and alliance on the planet. Right now, they all looked tired and uncomfortable. Admiral Hughes, Secretary General Walter Price, spoke first. Thank you for coming on such short notice. I assume you've reviewed the situation? I have, sir, Patricia said. Her voice was calm, but inside she was furious. The Velisons have been calling for help for almost a week. The Galactic Council has done nothing. Not one ship. Not one response, nothing. We've reached out to our council liaison, said Councilor Jane Martinez. She represented the Americas. Ambassador Krell won't return our calls. Neither will any of the other council representatives. It's like they're all hiding. They are hiding, Patricia said bluntly. They made a decision to let Velis Prime die, and they don't want to explain it. Councilor Richard Hayes leaned forward. He was from Europe, and he always preferred caution over action. Admiral, I understand the emotional impact of these images. We all feel for the Velisons. But this is not Earth's problem. We've only been in the Galactic Council for 20 years. We can't just ignore their authority and send our military wherever we want. Their authority? Patricia pulled up a document on the main screen. This is the Council Charter. Article 7, Section 3. Any distress signal from a protectorate world requires immediate military response. The Council wrote these rules. Now they're breaking them. Maybe they have good reasons, suggested Councillor Liu Chen from the Asian Coalition. The Krath are extremely dangerous. Perhaps the Council decided that Velis Prime couldn't be saved, and chose not to waste resources on a losing battle. Patricia's jaw tightened. So we should let 3 million people die because saving them might be expensive? That's not what I said, Admiral, Liu replied carefully. I'm simply pointing out that we don't have all the information. Rushing into this without understanding why the Council held back could be a mistake. The only mistake here is doing nothing, Patricia shot back. On the screens, another city vanished in flames. The Krath were working through the planet methodically, destroying everything in their path. They weren't even taking resources yet. First they killed, then they consumed. That was how the Krath always worked. Councillor Omar Bashir from the African Union spoke up. What military assets do we have near Velis Prime? Patricia changed the display to show a star map. The carrier Washington and her battle group. 3 frigates, 2 destroyers, and the carrier with full fighter squadrons. About 4,000 personnel total. They're currently 6 days from Velis Prime at maximum speed. Against how many Krath? Richard asked. Intelligence estimates between 50 and 80 capital ships, plus countless smaller attack craft. Patricia kept her voice steady even as she said the terrible numbers. Richard stood up. You're talking about suicide. We would be outnumbered 20 to 1, minimum. Even if we could reach Velis Prime, we can't win that battle. Humanity has faced bad odds before, Patricia said. In history books and propaganda films, perhaps, Richard said sharply. Not in reality. I cannot support sending 4,000 of our people to certain death for a world that means nothing to Earth strategically. It should mean something morally, Jane Martinez interrupted. These are innocent people calling for help. Doesn't that matter? Of course it matters, Richard turned to face her. But we have to think about Earth first. We have families, we have responsibilities. We can't throw away thousands of lives just to feel good about ourselves. Is that what you think this is? Patricia's voice grew cold. Feeling good? Those people down there sent a plea to the entire galaxy. Every civilization, every species, every government that claims to stand for law and order. They begged for help, and everyone ignored them. Everyone. She pulled up another video. This one showed a school. Velisan children were huddled inside while their teachers tried to protect them. Then the building shook as Krath weapons hit nearby. The children screamed. Those kids down there don't understand galactic politics, Patricia continued. They don't know about strategic considerations or cost-benefit analysis. They just know that they're dying and no one is coming to save them. Is that the galaxy we want to be part of? Is that who we want to be? The room fell silent. On the screens, the distress signal continued to play. Please, someone help us. Our children are dying. Please. Councillor Liu spoke again, more quietly this time. Admiral, even if we wanted to help, how could we make a difference? You said it yourself. The odds are impossible. I didn't say we would destroy the Krath fleet, Patricia replied. But Captain Kate Morrison commands the Washington. She's one of our best tactical minds. If anyone can get civilians off that planet, it's her. You're talking about an evacuation? Walter Price looked interested for the first time. Not a combat mission? Combat will be necessary to create an evacuation corridor, Patricia admitted. But the primary objective would be saving lives, not winning battles. Get in. Load as many people as possible. Get out. How many could we save? Omar asked. Patricia did some quick calculations in her head. If everything goes perfectly? Maybe 500,000. More likely a few 100,000. It depends on how long we can hold a defensive perimeter. That's not everyone, Richard pointed out. No, Patricia agreed. But it's better than no one. The debate continued for another hour. Richard argued that Earth shouldn't risk its people for strangers. Liu worried about antagonizing the council. Jane insisted that morality mattered more than politics. Omar asked careful questions about logistics and costs. Through it all, Walter Price stayed quiet, watching and listening. As Secretary General, his word would be final. Whatever he decided, that would be Earth's answer. Finally, Walter held up his hand. "Everyone stop talking, Admiral Hughes," he said slowly. "If we send the Washington, what are the crew's chances of survival?" Patricia appreciated that he asked about survival instead of victory. "Low, sir, but not zero. Captain Morrison is smart and brave. If anyone can pull this off, it's her and her people. And if we don't send them, then Velis Prime dies. Every man, woman, and child. The Krath don't take prisoners. They don't negotiate. They just kill." Patricia met his eyes. "And the galaxy will know that when innocent people called for help, humanity chose to stay safe and comfortable." Walter nodded slowly. He looked around the room at all the council members, then back at Patricia. "Send the Washington," he said quietly. "Full authorization. Whatever resources they need." Richard jumped to his feet. "Secretary General, I must protest this decision. You're sending our people to die for nothing." "Not for nothing, Councillor Hayes." Walter's voice carried the weight of finality, for the simple idea that when someone is drowning, you throw them a rope. You don't stand on shore calculating the cost. He turned to Patricia. "Admiral, make it happen, and make sure the entire galaxy knows what we're doing and why. If the Council wants to object, they can do it publicly." Patricia nodded. "Yes, sir. I'll contact Captain Morrison immediately." As the meeting broke up, people filed out in small groups. Some looked relieved. Others looked worried. Richard Hayes walked past Patricia without looking at her, his face tight with anger. Jane Martinez paused beside Patricia. "Do you really think they can save anyone?" "I think they'll try," Patricia replied. "And sometimes trying is what matters." Back in her office, Patricia composed the message to Captain Kate Morrison. It was short and direct. "Proceed to Velis Prime. Evacuate as many civilians as possible. Engage Krath forces as necessary. Return home safely." At the end, she added one more line. "The whole world is watching. Make us proud." She sent the message and then sat back in her chair. In 6 days, they would know if Earth had made the right choice. 6 days until Captain Morrison and her crew reached Velis Prime. 6 days until humanity proved whether they meant the words they said about honor and duty and protecting the innocent. Patricia pulled up the video feeds from Velis Prime again. The cities were still burning. The people were still dying. But now, for the first time in a week, help was coming. It might not be enough. It might be too late. But it was coming, and maybe, just maybe, that would make all the difference. On Earth, the news spread quickly. Humanity was sending ships to Velis Prime. The media went crazy. Some people cheered. Others protested. Everyone had an opinion. But one thing was certain. The galaxy was about to learn something about humanity. When someone called for help, humans answered. Even when it was dangerous. Even when it was hard. Even when the smart thing would be to look away and pretend they hadn't heard. Humans answered. That was Earth's choice. Now they just had to hope it was the right one. Captain Kate Morrison had never seen her crew move so fast. The message from Earth Command came through 6 hours ago, and since then, the Washington and her entire battle group had been preparing for combat. Maximum speed to Velis Prime. Evacuate as many civilians as possible. Engage the Krath as necessary. It sounded simple when written down. In reality, it was probably suicide. Kate stood on the bridge of the Washington, watching the tactical display as her fleet burned through space toward Velis Prime. The carrier was the biggest ship in her group, with enough fighters and bombers to make a Krath fleet think twice. At least that was the theory. Around her, the 3 frigates and 2 destroyers kept pace, their crews preparing for battle. 6 days of traveling at maximum burn had brought them to the edge of the Velis system. Now they could see the full horror of what was happening. "Jesus Christ," whispered Commander Lisa Grant, Kate's second in command. She was staring at the main screen with wide eyes. Kate understood why. The space around Velis Prime looked like a graveyard. Debris from destroyed satellites drifted everywhere. The remains of civilian transport ships floated among the wreckage. Ships that had tried to flee but never made it. And everywhere, like locusts covering a field, were the Krath. "Count," Kate said quietly. Lieutenant Jack Hayes worked at the tactical station, his hands moving quickly. 73 capital ships, Captain. Unknown number of fighters and smaller craft. They're positioned in a defensive sphere around the planet. What about the surface? Jack was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was hollow. 3 cities left, Captain. Maybe 4. Population readings show about 200,000 survivors, down from 3 million. Kate felt something cold settle in her chest. They had traveled for 6 days. In that time, more than 2.5 million people had died. The Krath had been efficient and thorough. "Show me the surface," she ordered. The main screen changed to show Velis Prime from orbit. Where green continents had once held beautiful cities, now there was only ash and fire. The Krath had burned everything. They had destroyed farms, homes, schools, hospitals. Nothing was spared. The few remaining cities were surrounded by Krath forces, trapped like animals in a cage. "The Krath know we're here," Lisa said. "They're repositioning. They're not going to let us get close." Kate studied the tactical situation. The Krath had arranged their ships in a sphere around Velis Prime, with the heaviest concentration of forces around the surviving cities. They were waiting. They knew exactly what humanity would try to do, and they were ready to stop it. "Options?" Kate asked her command staff. Commander Paul Jenkins appeared on one of the communication screens. He commanded the frigate Atlanta. "We could try to punch through to one city. Hit them hard and fast, land our transports, load who we can, and run. They'd swarm us the second we committed," Lisa said. "We'd never get the transports loaded before they overwhelmed our defenses." "What if we divided their forces?" suggested Commander Rachel Stone from the destroyer Phoenix. "Hit multiple locations at once. Make them choose which city to defend." "We don't have enough ships for that," Paul replied. "We'd be spreading ourselves too thin. They'd pick us off one group at a time." Kate listened to them debate, her mind working through the problem. Every plan ended the same way. Not enough ships. Not enough firepower. Not enough time. The Krath had them outgunned, and everyone knew it. But there was one thing the Krath might not expect. Humans were good at being unpredictable. "Do we have communication with the surface?" Kate asked. Lieutenant Emma Foster looked up from her station. "Partial, Captain. The Velisons have some emergency transmitters running. The signal quality is poor, but we can talk to them. Get me whoever is in charge down there. I don't care if it's a mayor, a general, or someone's grandmother. Find me someone with authority." It took 20 minutes of trying different frequencies, but finally a face appeared on the screen. He was young, maybe 30 years old. His fur was covered in ash and his eyes looked tired. His name was Corvin, and before the Krath came, he had been a teacher. Now he was the leader of New Haven, the largest surviving city. "Captain Morrison," Corvin's voice was rough from smoke. "Your people are from Earth?" "That's right," Kate said. "How many people are in New Haven?" "Maybe 80,000. We've taken in refugees from smaller settlements." Corvin looked at something off-screen, then back at Kate. "Captain, I need to be honest. We're grateful anyone came, but there are so many Krath ships. How can you possibly save us?" "That's what I wanted to talk to you about," Kate said. "Corvin, we can't fight the Krath directly. We don't have the numbers, but we might be able to get your people out if you're willing to trust us." "Trust you how?" Kate leaned closer to the screen. "With everything," she explained her plan. It was crazy. It was dangerous. It violated at least 3 different military regulations, but it might work. Corvin listened carefully, his expression growing more worried as Kate talked. "That's extremely risky," Corvin said when she finished. "Yes," Kate agreed, "but it's the only chance we have. Can you organize your people?" Corvin was quiet for a moment. Behind him, Kate could hear explosions. The Krath were still attacking the outskirts of the city. "Time was running out. How long do we have?" Corvin asked. "Our tactical analysis says the Krath will launch their final assault in about 60 hours, Kate replied. "That's their pattern. They isolate the survivors, eliminate all escape routes, then destroy everything that's left. 60 hours to save 80,000 people." Corvin looked tired. "Captain Morrison, even if your plan works, we can't save everyone, can we?" Kate wanted to lie. She wanted to tell him that everything would be fine. But Corvin deserved the truth. "No," she said quietly. "We can't save everyone, but we can save some, and some is better than none." Corvin nodded slowly. "I'll organize the evacuation. Every person who can walk will be ready to move on your signal." "Good," Kate said. "Corvin, I need you to understand something. We're going to do everything we can, but this is going to be dangerous. People might die in the evacuation." "People are already dying," Corvin replied. "At least this way, we're dying while trying to escape instead of waiting for the end." He managed a small smile. "Thank you for coming, Captain." No one else did. The transmission ended. Kate turned to her crew. They were all watching her, waiting for orders. "All ships, status report," Kate ordered. One by one, her commanders checked in. The Atlanta was ready. The Phoenix was ready. All ships were at maximum readiness. The crews were scared but determined. They knew the odds. They knew many of them might not make it home. But they were ready to try anyway. "Captain, I'm picking up something on long-range sensors," Jack Hayes said suddenly. His voice had changed. Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. Kate's heart sank. "Krath reinforcements? They couldn't handle more enemy ships. Identify them," she ordered. Jack worked at his console, then stopped. His face went pale. "Captain, those aren't Krath ships. They're Council vessels. 37 capital ships just arrived. They're broadcasting on all frequencies." Emma put the transmission on speakers. A voice filled the bridge, cold and alien and full of authority. "Human vessels. This is High Commander Xerax of the Galactic Council Defense Force. You are operating in violation of Council military protocols. Stand down immediately and withdraw from this system." Kate felt anger flash through her. They wait until now? Until humanity has traveled for days, until they're committed, until they're about to risk everything? Now the Council shows up? "Captain, what do we do?" Lisa asked quietly. Kate pulled up information about the Council fleet. 37 ships, heavy cruisers and battleships. More than enough firepower to destroy the Krath if they wanted to, or to destroy the human fleet if they decided to enforce their orders. "Human vessels acknowledge our transmission." Xerax's voice continued. "You must withdraw. The Velison situation has been deemed unsalvageable. The Council has authorized a containment protocol." Containment protocol? Kate searched her database. When she found the definition, her blood ran cold. "They're going to sterilize the planet. They're going to kill everyone down there to make sure the Krath don't spread to other worlds." The bridge fell silent. Everyone understood now. The Council hadn't come to help. They had come to finish the job the Krath started. "Captain Morrison." Xerax's voice was directed at her now. "We have analyzed your tactical situation. You cannot win this battle. If you attempt this evacuation, the Krath will destroy your ships. The Council is offering you a chance to withdraw with honor. Do not waste human lives on a fight you cannot win." Kate looked at her crew. Jack at his station, hands steady despite the fear in his eyes. Emma at communications, waiting for orders. Lisa standing beside her, ready to follow whatever decision Kate made. On the screens, Paul and Rachel watched from their ships, waiting to see what humanity would do. And on the planet below, 200,000 Velisons waited to see if anyone in the galaxy still kept their promises. Kate touched the communication panel. "High Commander Xerax, this is Captain Kate Morrison. I acknowledge your transmission." She could almost feel Xerax's satisfaction through the speakers. He thought she was going to obey. He thought humanity would back down. "However," Kate continued, her voice hard as steel, "the evacuation was controlled chaos wrapped in desperate hope." Kate watched from the bridge of the Washington as her fleet burned hard toward Velis Prime. The Krath fleet moved to intercept them immediately. 73 massive ships against 6 human vessels. The math was simple and brutal. Humanity was about to lose this fight badly. But Kate had never planned to fight the Krath head-on. "All batteries target their command ships," Kate ordered. "Maximum firepower. Make them think we're coming straight at them." The Washington's main guns opened fire. Massive kinetic rounds shot out at incredible speeds, slamming into the largest Krath vessels. The Atlanta and Phoenix added their weapons to the barrage. Every gun the human fleet had was firing at once, all focused on the biggest enemy ships. The Krath had been expecting a defensive battle. They thought the humans would try to protect themselves while slowly approaching the planet. Kate's aggressive attack surprised them for exactly 8 seconds. 8 seconds was all she needed. "Landing craft away," Lisa reported. "All transports are heading for the surface." While the warships drew every bit of Krath attention, 24 landing craft and cargo haulers dropped toward Velis Prime. They weren't pretty ships. They weren't even particularly safe. But they could hold thousands of people in their cargo bays, and right now that was all that mattered. On the surface, Corvin was coordinating the evacuation. The Velisons had abandoned their cities hours ago, streaming toward the landing zones in every vehicle they could find. Trucks, cars, farming equipment, anything with wheels. When the vehicles ran out of fuel, people abandoned them and ran on foot. Parents carried small children. Teenagers helped elderly people walk. No one was being left behind if there was any way to bring them. The first landing craft touched down in New Haven's central square. Its rear ramp dropped before the ship had even fully settled, and Velisons poured inside. The crew chief, a tough sergeant named Carlos White, stood at the entrance counting people as they passed. 800. 1,000. 1,500. The craft was only rated for 800 passengers. Keep loading, Carlos shouted over the roar of engines and distant explosions. We'll make room somehow. In orbit, the Washington was taking heavy damage. The craft had recovered from their initial surprise, and now they pressed their attack with terrible intensity. Plasma torpedoes and laser fire hammered against the carrier's shields. Warning alarms screamed across the bridge. Hull breaches on multiple decks. Casualties mounting. Shields down to 30%, Jack reported, his voice tense. We can't take much more of this. Phoenix is in trouble, Lisa added. She's lost main power. Kate watched on her screen as Rachel Stone's destroyer tumbled through space, trailing atmosphere and debris. Small escape pods were launching from the dying ship, scattering in all directions as the crew abandoned their vessel. Atlanta, break off and recover Phoenix survivors, Kate ordered. Washington will hold the line. Captain, we can't hold much longer, Lisa said quietly. We need to recall the transports now or we won't have any ships left to protect them. Not yet, Kate said firmly. Every minute is another 100 people loaded. We hold. The Washington shuddered violently as a Krath torpedo broke through the weakened shields and tore a burning hole along the hull. The lights flickered. More alarms added their voices to the chaos. Damage reports flooded in from every section of the ship, and then, impossibly, the Krath fire began to slacken. Captain, the Council fleet? Emma's voice was shocked. They're engaging the Krath. Kate looked at her tactical display in disbelief. The 37 Council warships had entered the battle. But instead of targeting the human vessels like she feared, they were hitting the Krath with everything they had. Heavy plasma cannons and missile batteries tore into the Krath formation with professional precision. Incoming transmission from High Commander Xerax, Emma reported. Kate accepted it. The alien commander's face appeared on her screen. His expression was hard to read, but something in his eyes looked almost like respect. Captain Morrison, it has been brought to our attention that the Velison civilians may yet be saved. The Council is hereby authorizing military intervention to facilitate evacuation operations. Brought to your attention? Kate couldn't help but ask. What changed? Xerax's expression might have been the equivalent of a small smile. Your Admiral Hughes has been broadcasting your communications across every public channel in Council space. Every word you said, every order you gave. The citizens of the galaxy were not pleased with our initial response. There are protests on 16 worlds. Several governments have recalled their ambassadors. The political situation became impossible to ignore. Kate felt relief wash through her. So you're here to help? We are here to do what should have been done from the beginning, Xerax said carefully. Your intervention has embarrassed the Council, Captain Morrison. That is not something we will forget easily, but we also will not forget that you were right to come. The Council fleet tore into the Krath formation with devastating efficiency. Suddenly the numbers weren't 73 against 6 anymore. They were 73 against 43, and the Krath were the ones outnumbered. The insect-like ships tried to reorganize their defense, but the Council forces gave them no time. Ship after ship exploded under concentrated fire. All transports, this is Morrison, Kate broadcast to her landing craft. You have Council support now. Load everyone you can. We'll protect you. On the surface, Carlos White watched his transport's cargo bay fill far beyond capacity. People were packed shoulder to shoulder. Some were sitting. Many were standing. Children were being passed overheads to fill every available space. That's 2,000, his co-pilot said nervously. We're at maximum weight. We need to lift off. Wait, Carlos said. He could see more people running toward the ship. A woman with a baby. An old man being helped by 2 teenagers. 30 more seconds. Carlos, if we get any heavier, we won't be able to achieve orbit. Then we'll get a tow, Carlos replied. 30 more seconds, the last refugees squeezed aboard. Carlos hit the button to close the ramp and felt the ship strain under the weight as it lifted off. The engine screamed in protest. The frame groaned. But slowly, impossibly, the overloaded transport climbed toward the sky. All across Velis Prime, the same scene repeated. Landing craft, pushed far beyond their design limits, carried precious cargo toward orbit. Some couldn't make it on their own power and had to be towed by warships. Others barely cleared the atmosphere before their engines gave out. But one by one they made it to safety. In New Haven, Corvin watched the last transport lift off. The city was empty now. Everyone who could be saved had been loaded onto the ships. He looked around at the abandoned streets, the empty buildings, the homes that would never see their families again. "Sir, we need to go," one of his assistants said. "We're on the last transport. If we don't leave now, we'll be left behind." Corvin nodded. He took one last look at his city, memorizing every detail. Then he turned and ran for the waiting transport. The Krath, realizing what was happening, tried desperately to stop the evacuation. They broke through the defensive lines in several places, their fighters diving toward the landing zones. But every time they got close, Council ships intercepted them. The great powers of the galaxy had finally decided to act, and they brought overwhelming force to bear. The battle lasted 4 more hours. 4 hours of desperate fighting, of ships pushed beyond their limits, of crews refusing to give up even when exhaustion and injury said they should. The Washington's shields failed completely. The Atlanta took heavy damage protecting Phoenix survivors, but they held. Humanity and the Council together held the line. Finally, the last transport cleared the atmosphere. The last refugee was safe aboard a ship. The evacuation was complete. All transports secured, Lisa reported. Total count 217,412 Velisan civilians. Kate closed her eyes for a moment. 200,000 people who would see tomorrow. Who would have a chance to rebuild? Who would live because humanity decided that some things were worth fighting for? Casualties? She asked quietly. Phoenix lost with most of her crew. Lisa's voice was heavy. 173 confirmed dead. 419 wounded. 1 landing craft was destroyed on approach. We lost it and everyone aboard. 173 people who had woken up this morning, done their duty, and believed that protecting the innocent mattered. They would never go home. Their families would never see them again. But because of them, 200,000 others would live. "Captain, transmission from the surface," Emma said. "It's Corvin. He wanted to send a message before we leave the system." "Put it through." Corvin's face appeared on the screen. He was in the cargo hold of a transport, surrounded by his people. They looked exhausted, traumatized, but alive. There was hope in their eyes now. "Captain Morrison, I don't know if my people will ever see our world again. I don't know if we can rebuild what we lost. But I want you to know something important." His voice grew stronger. "When we sent our distress signal, we sent it to the entire galaxy. Every civilized species, every member of the Council, every government and military force in known space. We begged for help." He paused, his eyes bright with emotion. The Washington limped through space toward home. The carrier's hull was scarred with burn marks and holes. Her shields were completely offline. Half her weapons were destroyed. But she was alive, and she carried 40,000 Velisan refugees in her cargo bays, packed into every available space. Kate stood on the bridge, looking at the damage reports. It would take months to repair the Washington properly. Maybe longer. The Phoenix was gone completely, destroyed in the battle. 173 crew members would never see Earth again. Their families would receive folded flags and medals and the thanks of a grateful nation. But those things would never bring them back. "Captain, incoming transmission from Earth Command," Emma said. "It's Admiral Hughes." Kate straightened her uniform, though it was stained and torn. "Put her through." Patricia's face appeared on the screen. She looked tired but satisfied. "Captain Morrison." "Good work out there. Thank you, Admiral." Kate hesitated. "We lost a lot of good people." "I know," Patricia said quietly. "And Earth will honor them. But Kate, you need to understand what you've accomplished. The entire galaxy watched what happened at Velis Prime. Every species, every government, every citizen with access to communication networks saw humanity risk everything to save people who couldn't save themselves. The Council helped in the end," Kate pointed out. "Only because you shamed them into it," Patricia replied. "If you hadn't gone, if you hadn't stood up to High Commander Xerax, those people would be dead right now. The Council would have sterilized the planet and pretended it never happened." Kate thought about that. 200,000 lives saved because humanity decided that the right thing mattered more than safety or politics or following orders. "What happens now?" Kate asked. "Now you come home," Patricia said. "Bring those refugees with you. We'll find places for them, and then we'll see how the galaxy responds." The transmission ended. Kate turned to Lisa. Set course for Earth, best speed. Aye, Captain, Lisa said with a small smile. Let's go home. In the cargo bays of the Washington and the other surviving ships, the Velosan refugees tried to process everything that had happened. They had lost their world. They had watched their civilization burn. They had said goodbye to friends and family who didn't make it to the transports. The trauma would stay with them forever, but they were alive. Against all odds, against the indifference of the galaxy, against the calculated decisions of the powerful, they had survived. And they had survived because one species decided that saving them was worth the cost. Corvin moved through the crowded cargo bay, checking on his people. Children were sleeping on makeshift beds. Adults shared food and water that the humans had provided. Some people were crying. Others sat in stunned silence. But slowly, gradually, they were beginning to understand that they were safe. An elderly Velosan woman grabbed Corvin's arm as he passed. Is it true? She asked. Did the humans really come just to save us? Yes, Corvin said. They came across the galaxy to help us. They fought for us. Some of them died for us. The woman's eyes filled with tears. Why? We're nothing to them. We have no wealth, no power, nothing they could want. I don't know, Corvin admitted, but I'm grateful they did. The journey to Earth took 12 days. During that time, the story of Velis Prime spread across the galaxy like wildfire. News networks on 100 worlds showed footage of the battle. They broadcast Kate's confrontation with High Commander Xerax. They interviewed survivors who talked about watching the human ships arrive when everyone else had abandoned them. On the Council homeworld, massive protests filled the streets. Citizens demanded answers. How could the Council abandon a protectorate world? Why did it take human intervention to force action? What did this say about the Council's commitment to its own laws and principles? The Council held an emergency session. Ambassador after ambassador stood up to defend their government's actions. They talked about strategic considerations and military realities and the difficulty of fighting the Krath. But their words sounded hollow compared to the simple fact that humanity had gone when no one else would. The humans are new to galactic politics, one ambassador argued. They don't understand the complexities involved in these decisions. They understand that when someone is dying, you help them, another ambassador shot back. That's not complicated. That's basic morality. The debate raged for days. Some species sided with the Council leadership, arguing that difficult decisions sometimes required accepting losses. Others praised humanity for showing the courage that the Council had lost. The galaxy was divided, but on the streets, in homes, in schools, and workplaces across hundreds of worlds, ordinary citizens were making up their own minds. And increasingly, they were reaching the same conclusion. Humanity had done something remarkable. They had shown that honor and duty still meant something, that protecting the weak was worth risk and sacrifice, that civilization required more than just treaties and trade agreements. When the Washington finally reached Earth orbit, the planet was waiting. News crews from every nation broadcast the arrival live. Millions of people watched as the battered carrier and her escorts approached. Millions more lined up to volunteer housing for the refugees, to donate supplies, to help in any way they could. Kate stood on the bridge and looked down at the blue and green world below. Home. She had wondered if she would ever see it again. Now she was here, and she had brought 200,000 lives with her. All ships, this is Morrison, she broadcast to her fleet. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for proving that humanity deserves its place among the stars. You made Earth proud today. Welcome home. The landing took hours. Transport after transport descended to designated reception centers around the globe. Medical teams were waiting to treat the injured and traumatized. Translators helped coordinate communication. Temporary housing was set up in record time. The entire planet had mobilized to help the refugees. Corvin was one of the last to step onto Earth's soil. He stood at the base of the transport ramp, looking around in wonder. The sky was blue. The air was clean. Buildings stood intact and whole. After weeks of fire and death, the peaceful normalcy of Earth felt almost unreal. A young woman approached him. She wore a uniform that identified her as a refugee coordinator. Welcome to Earth, she said in accented but understandable Velosan. My name is Sarah. I'll help you get settled. Thank you, Corvin managed. Thank you for everything, Sarah smiled. That's what humans do. We help. Over the following weeks and months, the impact of Velis Prime continued to ripple across the galaxy. The Council implemented new protocols to ensure faster response to distress signals. Several species reached out to Earth to establish closer diplomatic relations. Trade agreements were signed. Cultural exchanges were arranged. Humanity's reputation in galactic politics transformed overnight. But more importantly, something fundamental had changed in how the galaxy saw itself. The rescue of Velis Prime had reminded billions of citizens that civilization required more than just laws and institutions. It required the will to act when action was needed. It required courage to do what was right even when it was difficult or dangerous. On Earth, the Velisan refugees began to build new lives. They learned human languages. They found jobs. Their children attended human schools. Some eventually returned to help rebuild their homeworld once the Krath were driven off. Others chose to stay on Earth, making it their new home. Corvin became a teacher again, this time in a human school where he taught both human and Velisan children. He told them stories about his world, about the culture and history that the Krath had tried to destroy. But he also told them about the day humanity came, about Captain Kate Morrison and her crew, about the sacrifice of the Phoenix, about the moment when one species decided that saving strangers was worth any price. Remember this, he would tell his students. When my people sent a plea to the galaxy, only humanity answered. Not because they had to, not because there was profit in it, not because we could offer them anything in return. They came because it was the right thing to do. That is what true civilization looks like. Years later, Kate Morrison retired from the military with full honors. She had been promoted several times, given medals, praised by presidents and prime ministers. But the moment she treasured most was a simple ceremony at the Velisan Community Center on Earth. Corvin presented her with a small crystal, carved in the traditional Velisan style. It showed a ship among stars, heading toward a world in darkness. "This is for you," he said. "So you never forget that 200,000 people are alive today, because you believed their lives mattered." Kate held the crystal carefully. "I could never forget," she said quietly. "Good," Corvin smiled. "Because we won't either. My children will tell their children about this. Their children will tell the next generation. For as long as the Velisan people exist, we will remember that humanity answered our call." The story of Velis Prime became legend. Children on 100 worlds learned about it in school. Historians wrote books analyzing every decision, every moment of the battle. Artists created paintings and sculptures commemorating the rescue. But beyond all the analysis and commemoration, one simple truth remained.